Hello friends, so today's video is going to be a mini wrap up as well as some end of the year plans, keeping you in the loop about a few things. Before I jump into those things though, a big thank you to Novel Wicks. This is a little candle shop and they make primarily book themed and fandom themed candles. They reached out to me to see if I would be interested in receiving some of their candles to show all of you, and then also they gave me a discount code L10 ELLE 10 to get you 10% off your own order. They sent me this sweet little card and it says Black Friday deals are going on from November 14th through the 25th. I have a 12 days of Christmas set available and the code L10 is good for an entire year. And they sent this adorable little card. I specifically got the All I Want for Christmas is a Book candle. The scents are citrus, fir needles, and eucalyptus. It does definitely smell really fantastic, and my favorite, has a wood wick. I don't know if any of you have had wood wicks before, but they crackle and they definitely are great for creating a little bit of a mood when you're reading, which is really fun. They also have these smaller size, these little tins. This one is a coffee and currently reading candle, also has the wood wick, and it smells great. It smells kind of like a coffee shop that also sells pastries and baked goods. And then the book themed one that I got, the specific book themed one I got, was an Emily Henry one, which I thought was fun. It's dark chocolate, suede, and sandalwood. It also smells great. It also has the wood wick. So definitely check Novel Wicks out if you're interested in getting any candles this holiday season. For the wrap up, I only have a couple of things to mention, but we're coming up on the end of the year, and so my reading is going to be slowing down quite a bit. I might not do another formal wrap up before the end of the year, so I wanted to have a sec to at least acknowledge in a designated place, a designated wrap up, these particular books. So the first is actually a manga series. I mentioned it recently. Luna Bear's right by me, by the way, if you hear grunting, because she's very vocal and loud sighing. But either way, I mentioned this one recently in a Cozy Reads video, and that would be the manga series Witch Hat Atelier. This has some of the absolute most beautiful, delightful, charming, magical artwork that I have ever seen in a manga story. I know a lot of times you can't really show artwork in your videos, but I wish I could because, oh my gosh, is the art amazing. The downside to this story is it's not yet completed and the volumes tend to come out kind of far apart from each other. So if you do end up getting into it, just know you're gonna probably have to wait before you can keep going with it. But I would still encourage you to pick it up because it's a lovely story so far, so charming. We follow a young girl named Coco who is really interested in magic, but as far as she knows, you have to be born with this gift in order to use magic, and she doesn't have that, so she thinks magic is always going to be outside her grasp. One day, a person who is a witch comes into their town, and he is somebody who is really sweet and really nice and really encouraging to her, and she ends up seeing him use magic in a way that makes her believe maybe there is a chance for her to have access to magic. What she witnessed, she was not supposed to witness, and that's where the story then picks up. After that, we have the Seventh Bride. I mentioned this in a recent video about some standalone fantasy stories. This is one that falls somewhere between young adult and an adult due to the fact that some of the things that are occurring and some of the implications of the things that are occurring are a little bit more adult, but the main character herself is only 15 years old. The setup is that she has been asked to consider a marriage to someone who she does not want to marry, and she doesn't really have a say as much as they tell her, oh, it's your choice. This is a person that has a lot of power and a lot of prestige, and so she really can't refuse, and she knows if she tries, it will be her family that pays the price. So she's forced to consider this individual, and in doing so, she starts to discover more about them that makes her circumstances even worse, and it starts to get very almost grim fairy tale-like. This is written by T. Kingfisher. I still think, as far as the grim fairy tale feel of some of Kingfisher's works, that I liked Nettle and Bone more than this one, but they're still different enough that with any of her works, if you pick up one and you don't love it, try another one. I would say that's true of this one as well. I just found Nettle and Bone had such a great amount of humor I found that I quite liked, because of course humor is very subjective, But I liked the humor in Nettle and Bone. I thought it was cheeky and silly and a little dry. Whereas in this one, because the character, I think due to the fact that they're younger, it came across a little bit sillier and maybe not quite as clever. It's funny because I also recently read Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher, and that one is young adult, and the main character is very young. She's 14, and I think that one so leaned into the ridiculous, silly factor that it ended up working, but this sort of in-between, I don't know what it was. It was like the youthful voice up against the more serious, grim stakes didn't click with me the same way the other two did. The last book I'm going to mention is one where I'm not completed with it yet, but I just wanted to kind of fill you in and give you a heads up. It's one that I don't know that I'll be able to talk about before the end of the year, so I wanted to mention it now, and I'm really liking it, but I'm reading it quite slowly, and those of you who have read it will probably know immediately why that is. I'm reading The Goblin Emperor. This is another fantasy standalone. From everything I can tell, there is on Goodreads where it says it's number 1, and then there's an additional book that came out that takes place in the same world but follows someone else. I believe it's more of a prequel, but then its series name is different. But I think that's what it's referring to when it says that this is the first. But from everything I can tell, there is not a direct sequel currently. It's a little confusing though. I'll try to look into it a little more and see, I don't know, maybe the author is planning on writing a direct sequel. Regardless, this is political fantasy to the extreme right now. So the story at the very beginning, we have this young man named Maya who discovers that everybody else that is in power before him has died. And now suddenly he is the new emperor. He has sort of been cast away from society for most of his life. He doesn't really care for he doesn't have any desire to rule. He never thought he would rule. He has been taught how to properly do certain things involving the court, but due to the mistreatment that he has had to endure throughout his life, he really has no interest in becoming more involved in the courts. This obviously gets flipped on its head, and he doesn't really have a choice. He has to when everyone else dies, and he's suddenly thrust into this seat of power. Very quickly, he realizes there's a lot of people who want to take advantage of the situation by taking advantage of him, taking advantage of the fact that he is inexperienced, that he is generally speaking rather untrained. And there's a whole chunk, a lot of the beginning of the book, that's just dedicated to his first day and having all these people that he has to interact with. You kind of start from him waking up to when he goes to bed that day and all these tasks that he has to do. And it's one of those situations where, this is going to sound really ridiculous, but whenever you see presidents, the beginning of their presidency and then the end, and there's that like, oh my gosh, look how much it's aged them. I feel like this is the kind of book that, this is completely fictional, but you're like, that's why they're aging so much, because it's so stressful to watch this entire day go by with so many things happening that you're like, dude, when is he going to catch a break? Now, thus far, the reason that it's taking me a while to read this, even though I love political fantasy, is that, oh my gosh, has this author taken the I have created my own fantasy world to the extreme. So many of the words are fantasy, the kind of stereotype of long fantasy words that you're like, what is that word? Who is this person? Wait, is that a place or is that a person? And there's a lot at the beginning that's kind of a guide for you as to all these different names of people and places. There's also a thing that talks about their length. These are all people. A list of persons, places, things, and gods. So not all people. Apologies. But that was all those pages. And then before that, there's a kind of information. It says a handbook for travelers in the Elflands. There's names, forms of address, the emperors, and also just pronunciation so that you can try to have an idea of how you're supposed to say things. And at some point, I've kind of given up trying to figure out exactly how I'm supposed to say all of these made up names and places. But I'm really liking this story. It's kind of demanding, and I really want to ensure that I go through it slowly so that I can get the most out of it, because it is one where I appreciate how much effort and work has gone into this author creating this world and creating all these people and creating the backstories to this family and why this group of people hates this group of people and why they discriminate. And I want to take all of that in and feel like I'm in the know. It just requires a lot to do that. But anyway, for those of you that have read The Goblin Emperor, let me know your thoughts on it. Do you feel like at some point maybe it gets a little bit easier to know who's who, or would you say it continues to be a little tedious in its reading? From there, I wanted to get into some of my reading plans for the end of the year, keep you in the loop and give you a little bit of a heads up. And I'm not currently experiencing a reading slump by any means. I was intending to get a lot of reviews up by the end of the year and do even more new releases wrap-ups and even more regular wrap-ups, but I'm finding that I'm a little bit feeling fatigued, and so I'm trying to keep myself from experiencing a reading slump because I want to come into the new year with that renewed excitement. I don't know if you all feel that way, but I tend to feel really excited at the beginning of the year for all the things to come. The year hasn't beaten you down yet, so I want to ensure that I don't burn myself out trying to read a ton before January 1st, and then January 1st comes and now I feel like I need a break at a time when I should be excited for what's to come. So I'm kind of allowing myself to just enjoy this end of the year chunk, both in reading on my channel in general, not pushing myself to put up 5 to 7 videos, which is what I was doing there for a little bit. I'm just going to try to stick to my usual 3 to 4, sometimes maybe more type of schedule. And I'm probably, for the most part, pretty done doing wrap-ups and new releases wrap-ups, with the exception of I might try to pick up some of the Goodreads nominees that I haven't yet read, because even though I've read a lot of new fantasy this year, there's still a lot that ended up being ones I haven't read. So I'd like to get around to maybe a couple of those. After reading The Lost Metal, there's so many things to do with the Cosmere that I'm like, oh, I want to know all of the things. And so I kind of want to pick up a few of those lesser known Cosmere works so that I have that before the Cosmere read along that I'm doing next year. I'm also trying to reassess my schedule because I don't talk about it very much, and eventually I'll be giving more in-depth book updates, but I have been trying to fit writing into my regular schedule again, and to kind of go back to my whole having that renewed energy at the beginning of the year. What I'm trying to do for this last chunk of this year is incorporate writing into my schedule, figure out what works best so that when the new year starts, I have a sense of routine already developed rather than waiting until January to find that routine and then having some hit or miss type of experiments with my schedule and then finally fitting into something in February or March when it's like, okay, well now a few months have gone by. So the gist of it is essentially I'm trying to balance out the things that I'm passionate about. I'm trying to make sure I don't experience burnout or any reading slumps or anything like that. And then I'm also just kind of, rather than doing end of the year style videos at the beginning of next year, I'm trying to kind of do end of the year style videos at the actual end of this year and then just jump into next year ready to go. So kind of a lot of, I don't know, it felt like a lot of nothing. But I just wanted to keep you in the loop in case you're like, oh, is she gonna put up more new releases wrap-ups or something? Probably not really. But anyway, I hope you're all having a lovely November. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.